elections analyst and outreach coordinator with the California Secretary of State's office in the Elections Division. And I'm joined by my co-host, Julian. Julian, do you want to tell the folks a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Julian Castillo, and I'm also an elections analyst and outreach coordinator with the Secretary of State's office in elections. And I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you so much for tuning into the inaugural episode of This is Promote the Vote California, the podcast. Promote the Vote California is the newest initiative to come out of the Secretary of State's office. Our mission is to leverage the power of partnership by building relationships with businesses and organizations to support California communities and improve civic culture. We want to foster a meaningful dialogue among individuals and groups, providing reliable, accessible information on voting and how to be civically active.
The California Secretary of State's office is highlighting the 60th anniversary of Freedom Summer. And our podcast will be focused on continuing the conversation around service, civic education, voting engagement, and equity in California communities, all while drawing lessons from Freedom Summer's collective action. Freedom Summer stands as a testament to the power of unity. It brought together leaders and everyday citizens from across the nation to combat disenfranchisement. This historic movement served as the driving force behind the enactment of the Voting Rights Act of 1965.
It seems only right that our very first guest on this podcast is none other than Dr. Shirley N. Weber, the current California Secretary of State. We are thrilled to be having her join us on today's episode because of her tireless work around civic engagement and desire to see more involvement from voters.
Secretary Weber was born to sharecroppers in Hope, Arkansas, during the segregationist Jim Crow era. Her father, who left Arkansas after being threatened by a lynch mob, did not have the opportunity to vote until he was in his 30s. And although her family moved to California when Weber was just 3 years old, it was her family's experience in the Jim Crow South that has driven her activism and legislative work. She has fought to secure and expand civil rights for all Californians, including restoring voting rights for individuals who have completed their prison term. Her family was so passionate about equal access to voting that she grew up with a polling place right in their family's garage to ensure that same equity in her immediate community.
Secretary Weber attended the University of California, Los Angeles, where she received her BA, MA, and Ph.D. by the age of 26. Prior to receiving her doctorate, she became a professor at San Diego State University at the age of 23. She also taught at California State University at Los Angeles and Los Angeles City College before coming to San Diego State. She retired from the Department of Africana Studies after 40 years as a faculty member, serving several terms as department chair. Before her appointment as Secretary of State, Secretary Weber served 4 terms as the Assembly member representing California's 79th Assembly District, my home district. The 79th includes parts of the city of San Diego, as well as several cities and communities in the San Diego region.
Shirley Nash Weber, Ph.D., was nominated to serve as California Secretary of State by Governor Gavin Newsom in December of 2020. Voters then elected her for an entire term in November of 2022. Weber is California's first Black Secretary of State and only the 5th African American to serve as a state constitutional officer in California's 174-year history.
Secretary Weber's genuine passion and tireless quest for equality and fairness in all sectors of life have resulted in her pursuit of reforms in education and criminal justice. Her experience and track record prove that equity has always been at the forefront of her service to her community and the state. We are so excited for this opportunity to speak with Secretary Weber, and we hope y'all get to learn something new as well. Be sure to stick around after the conversation with Dr. Weber when Julian and I break down the episode and reflect on our conversation.
All right. Well, we just wanted to thank you again, Secretary Weber, for joining us today. We are really excited to learn more about you and your relationship with civic engagement and voting equity. So first question here, So, as part of your voting story, you talk candidly about the importance of the polling place that your family had in their garage and the significance of giving members of your surrounding community a safe and accessible place to vote. So, as we reflect on the power of communities and the power that they can have against disenfranchisement, what lessons do you think we can take from Freedom Summer? And how do you envision incorporating these lessons into our civic engagement efforts today?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me to be with you. I consider it quite an honor always to talk about voting and my experience in voting and my family's experience in voting. I have to correct one small thing, and that was we didn't vote in the garage. My father insisted that the voting place took place in our home. And so he thought it was so important what we were doing in the community that we didn't need to be in the garage where there were spiders and bugs, that we needed to be in the living room. And as a result, every election, my brother and my dad would take all the furniture out of the living room and the dining area and put it in I think the dining room table remained because it was the desk for people to register to come in. But he put the living room and all the other furniture either in the den or in the garage. And so our living room became the polling place, the place where people came to vote. And people felt very comfortable in coming because we were community people. My mother was a person who would collect money for cancer research and all kinds of things up in town, our neighborhood. So anytime there was a March of Dime or whatever it was, Miss Nash was in the neighborhood collecting money. Anybody died, my mother collected resources to buy flowers and turkeys and so forth and so on. So we were kind of a known resource, a known believable party in the community. And so when we moved to where we lived, there was no school that was available with a space for us to actually have voting. There was no rec center. There was no park nearby. There was no library. And surely you couldn't do it in the post office because it was much too small. So we didn't have a local place to vote. And so when my mother found that out, because she had worked at the polls at the rec center when we lived in the projects, and she was, when she moved, she transferred over to say, okay, I'll work over here too. And they were having difficulty finding a location that was agreeable to everyone. And so as a result, my mother raised her hand and volunteered our house. And she took pride in that, and so did my dad. And it gave a sense of importance and comfort to the community that this is something that people in the neighborhood do. And we had great turnout. People wanted to come because my mother would also bake and do things like that. So as a result, if you came by, you could probably have some coffee and some sweet potato pie after you basically voted. But it was just a known thing for us. It wasn't an inconvenience. We never complained about it. The kids, those of us never complained that we had to go in the back door. My mother would remind us, but we would know because my father had moved the furniture out, that we'd have to go in through the back door to come in and leave in the morning through the back door because people were in our living room voting, and my mother didn't want us to disturb them or have a lot of confusion. And so it really was a sense of pride on her part and my dad's as well, that we were able to do this for the community. My mother died probably 2 or 3 weeks before an election in June, and one of the elections in Los Angeles, the municipal elections, and they were concerned. The community was concerned. Oh my God, the voting lady's house is not. She's passed away very suddenly. What are we going to do? And my dad said to them very honestly, "Don't worry about that. If you want to come here to vote, you still can. I'll have one of my kids stay and open the door and provide you with whatever you need, but we'll fix it up for you." And registrar voters thought that it was wonderful, but it was really quite an inconvenience for a man who was grieving over the sudden death of his wife and the children. And so as a result, they scrambled and found a place and let my dad know that they had found another place and he would not have to be inconvenienced. But he didn't consider it an inconvenience. He said, if you can't, the house is here, that's what it's for, and you can still vote here. And so I think this says a lot about when communities do those kinds of things, that people in the community looked at this as something must be really important, that this family has decided to open their home, to let us in, to come into their living room and to vote, and to be in a place where they knew that we would be respectful of them and respectful of their vote. And this was something that decent people did because of the kinds of things that my mother did in the community, but also with voting. And so it was a lesson to all of us as kids that we that we always vote. We vote in every election. All 8 of us would vote in every election. We took pride in the fact that my mother did this, and she got a certificate, I think, every year from the Registrar of Voters that she did this great work. And so it was kind of interesting that this was something she did and she took pride in, and so did my dad. And it kind of transferred on to us that voting is really important, so important that people alter their lives just to make sure that people have an opportunity to have a place to go that's safe, and that voting is transparent, that you know what you're going to do, and people respect you as a result of your voting.
That's
Wow.
such
Well,
a beautiful story.
absolutely. And thank you for that correction on where the voting actually took place. I think having it in the home adds a whole new layer of intimacy and community when it's, right there physically in your home. So thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you for
No
clearing
problem.
that up.
My dad would turn over his grave if he thought you guys believed we were voting in the garage.
Well, I was thinking about the sweet potato pie. That's my
Oh
favorite.
yeah, yeah. My mother would make sweet potato pies and peach cobblers and things like that. So
Oh,
people who
wow.
work with her in the polls love to come, because you get a lunch break and you can go out and buy food if you want to or go home. But they love to hang around and eat, and they knew she'd have coffee in the morning and sometimes some other baked object that was there for them to have to nibble on. But it was a very comfortable place for people to come.
Community is a major focus with the Promote the Vote initiative. So it just drives home the importance of being involved in your community and being a support for your community. One of my favorite quotes from Dr. King has inspired the overall tenor of this podcast. And part of the quote reads, "Everybody can be great because everybody can serve." So I would love to hear what was the driving force behind your choice to serve.
I have to, and it's not just me, it's my brothers and sisters. There are 8 of us. And all of us have something that we do in a very unselfish way. My service at the state level and the things I've done is always brings pride to my brothers and sisters. So they show up at everything that is given for me. And sometimes when I don't invite them, they get mad because I don't want to inconvenience them with every certificate that I receive. But all of my family have a sense of giving. My mother had this philosophy that she was an amazing Christian woman who was not condemning of others, but a woman who served everybody. And so her position was, we used to have this philosophy that she had called the open hand philosophy. And she said, if your hand is open, giving to others, she said, yeah, every now and then you may drop a penny or so out of your hand, and you may lose a little bit. She said, but you're also open to receive because your hand is open. She said, but if you have a closed hand and a closed fist, it's guaranteed you won't lose a penny out of your hand, but it's also guaranteed you won't gain anything. And so we lived by this model that, if we help people, at some point we may need them. And in other points, we may not need them, but we'll need somebody else. And there will always be a place for us to receive. And so as a result, I've always operated under that premise. And so has my brothers and sisters. And so even though there were 8 of us, you would think there were more than 8 of us, because each one of us had a friend or 2 or 3 friends or 4 or 5 friends who kind of attached themselves to our family. That a lot of them will say that they're brothers and sisters and aunts and cousins and all kinds of things. So when we have family gatherings, it's a whole lot of folks who come who are not really biologically my brother or sister. And the same is true here from when I grew up, and the same is true here in San Diego. So we were taught that you give. And so anything my mother had, she believed that it was given to her by God, that even though we worked hard for it, but he had blessed us to be able to work to get it. So when we got new cars or whatever it was, my mother would throw any kid in the world in my dad's new car to take them wherever they needed to go. And he would always say, if I don't watch your mother, she'll give everything away. And she always cooked lots of food, and it wasn't expensive food. We didn't have like steaks and lobster and those kinds of things. We had beans and chicken and chili or whatever it was. And my mother always cooked more than we needed. And sometimes we didn't know why, but mainly everybody in the block, I discovered as I got older, a lot of the folks in the neighborhood knew that this lady in this house, the second house from the corner, didn't have money to give you. She wasn't going to give you money because of your drinking habits or whatever it was, but she would give you a meal. And so my mother always saved her tin pans and aluminum pans, and she saved, jelly jars and things like that. So that if you came and knocked on her door for a meal, she would have the dinner from before, the beans, the greens, the rice, whatever it was, and she would make you a plate. And we had this big porch on the front of our house, and you could sit, and they said, "Can I sit here for a while?" Sure. You could sit there on the porch, you could eat your dinner, and they would knock on the door and let my mother know that they had finished, and she would come and pick up the stuff and what have you. But everybody knew that this lady on the block would give you something to eat. And that was pretty much what we did. That's why when Red Cross or, the Cancer Society or whatever it was had a drive in the community, they could send something to my mother's house, and she would knock on every door. And there were sometimes unsavory characters behind the door, but they knew her. And they would always give her something. They were going to give her a couple of dollars or $5 or whatever it was, and so that she could mail off to the Cancer Society or the Red Cross. And so she was known as a lady who was always collecting for the cancer fund or for the this fund or the that fund. And if anyone on the block died, she would find out, and she would basically go and to their home, see what they needed, see what was missing. And she'd either send me to write the obituary. That was pretty standard, she said, because I had an education and God gave it to me. So I had to use it for the neighborhood community because they didn't know how to write an obituary. So I wrote everybody's obituary in the neighborhood. And my mother would go and find out what they need, and she would collect money from the neighbors to buy flowers and to make sure they had some food and those kinds of things. That's just what she did. And she taught us that. And I think much more than telling us that we should do it, we saw it. We saw it in everything that happened. We saw it in the clothes she would give away. We saw it in the food that she would give to others. We saw it in all of the kinds of things. And all of us have grown up with that kind of the giving experience. When you think about us in Los Angeles, everybody thinks about all the stuff that my brothers and sisters do. There's not a funeral at the church that my oldest sister, who's in her 80s, does not go and serve food to the family, cooks all the pies for everybody at the church, makes sure that they have food at the funeral, even if she doesn't feel well enough to stay and serve. But most of the time she's there serving, and she's helping. And that's her mission of what she does. And several of us have done other things. We've started choirs. We've done things as a nonprofit to give to kids who are in foster care, all kinds of things. But we were taught to give, that if you keep giving, you'll keep getting. And that has been true in our life. And so whether I'm helping my students at the university who need a place to stay, or they don't have any rent money, or they don't have this, or they have that, all of that stuff is a part of what we do. And it comes back in tenfold with the pride that we have for what they accomplish, the fact that they help others now where we were helping them. So I was raised with the concept that everything we had was given to us because God thought we were special people and that we would give it to others. And that's pretty much what we do as a family.
That's so beautiful. I loved the analogy of keeping your hand open as you give, and your
Yes.
hand will be open to receive. And you can just continue that cycle of serving and blessing and just wow. I love that. That's really nice. Um, so the California Secretary of State Promote the Vote initiative works with businesses to build a civic culture friendly workplace to engage, in conversations of civic engagement, voter education. And California is obviously a business and economic powerhouse. So, what power do you think businesses and organizations specifically have in the conversation about improving civic engagement and voting equity?
Well, the thing that's really important, when we were talking about this, or when I was talking about this early on, and I was at some chambers talking, and we're talking about what we do with young people and what we're trying to do in certain communities and what have you. We often leave out the work community. We often forget that there are a lot of folks who go to work every day who don't vote, and sometimes the employers have never asked them because they don't want to get in the business of deciding who's going to vote and who's not going to vote and all that kind of stuff. But they can do it if they make it in a really nonpartisan way and a part of the culture of that organization, that we want to encourage you to vote, we want to give you the opportunity to vote. And sometimes we try to, and as legislators, we try to mandate stuff. We'll give them 2 hours off, or give them whatever we want, how we want to push folks towards it. But I think employers can even do it better within the group to say, okay, we're going to see which unit has the highest voting rate. Go get your vote by, your sticker if you voted. If not, encourage someone else to vote. That's what I used to do with my students when in my class. I would insist that they go vote, that they register, and that they would vote. I didn't care who they voted for. I just wanted them to understand the power of the activity and the power of their voice, and that they were dependent upon the state for so many things in terms of their own education, that they should have a voice in saying who's doing what. And so we sometimes skip over businesses because we just assume that. And so when I was talking to chambers and I said, I really would love you guys to have some kind of a competition amongst yourselves, or something within your organization that would encourage people to go vote, to remind them that this is election day, to have election cookies out or whatever it may be. And they were like, wow, we would love to do that. We would love to do that. I said, well, you should, and we'll work with you to accomplish that. And I think it's important because everything in our life is determined oftentimes by who we vote for, what happens in the political arena, what voice that we express. And it's not just those who are politically engaged, it's everybody. When we're having difficulty in a government and we don't have good leadership, we're all affected by it. Whether it's at a federal or state level, it has an impact. If we have a school board that's dysfunctional, we discover that that's difficult because our kids are not getting what they need, and we are not opening our voice, and we're not picking people to serve on those boards that they should. And commissions and things, and just being aware that we're a community. When a community wakes up and understands it has power, that it can do things, the community improves. I mean, it's not, as a government agency, I always tell them, we can only do so much. We can give you some resources. We can help make things a little bit easier in terms of policies. But it's really the extra stuff that's added that really makes a community. The fact that they take pride in what they do, that they take pride in the community, that they're going to make sure that their streets or the trash is picked up, not only just by the city, but they're going to make sure that they're not putting trash in front of their own house, that they take pride in their property and keep it up and value it, and that they get engaged with their libraries and their rec centers and those kinds of things that really make a difference. And it's that level of engagement that's so very important. And people need to understand that it's not, the elected officials are really their voice. They're not their thinkers for them. They're not, who they have one vote and that's it in the system. But it's the communities that come together that really decide that they want a better community, that they want a stronger community, that they want more input into their community. And when we began to see that being done in communities, it makes a tremendous difference. Voting is a part of it. People who work in companies are happier when and employers discover that when they really feel that they're a part of something that takes place, that you're doing some small things that really make a lot of difference, that you have lunch once a month with the boss or something of that nature. That inspires people to be engaged so that they're not just somebody working, but not really taking care of the operation itself. And so I operate always on a principle that every employment agency is really, whether you're a government agency or private, that you're really like a big family, and you should be, because we can't see everybody, but those who work with you every day can see you. And the camaraderie, the support that you have, the respect that you have for the place where you work will drive innovation, will drive people to do things that they're not required to do, but they do it because they love where they work and they want people to be excited about it. And I see the difference even just in my office, where different divisions have much more support for each other and enthusiasm, but it's really based on not us giving them more money, but on the fact that they have a relationship in that organization that makes a difference. Voting is important, and it's important to every business that's there. Every job, every businessman knows that whether his company lives or dies, oftentimes is based on our tax base or the kinds of things that we offer, the knowledge that we have of the business and how it fits into what is going on, and their ability to have a voice in determining what the new things are that are coming out. So we want businesses to understand that this is their society, this is their world. And they should encourage their employees to basically understand what they're doing, to participate in it, because it makes the company stronger. It makes their community stronger. It'll make their workers work harder because they'll realize that this person cares about what I do much more than just simply wants the labor that I have to offer them. So our business community is important. California has a lot of small businesses, which makes it easier to really talk about the family of the community rather than just this huge conglomerate that works somewhere. We have a lot of small businesses, most of our businesses are small, less than 100 people as employees. And so we should take pride in the fact that we can encourage people to go vote. We can provide for them some opportunity, whether it's voting in that place or somewhere nearby, that we can, without getting into the weeds of how did you vote and who did you vote for, but really, did you vote? Did you express yourself? Did you have a voice? And if there are things that people don't understand, there's an opportunity, there's some flyers, there's some material, there's an opportunity for you to go on this website and look up some stuff and to really make a difference in their life as well as the community where we live. So getting our businesses involved is extremely important. And they know how important it is, what we do as elected officials to make a difference in their bottom line, but they're also in the life of the people who work for them, which is an extremely invaluable resource.
Yes, 100%. And I know the conversation that Julian and I have with our business partners when we meet with them is focused around building a civic community within the workplace, because we spend so much of our time at work. We're at work 8 hours a day, sometimes more. So having that ability to be civically engaged at work is so important. Recently, we met with a Promote the Vote business partner, and we were asked a simple but challenging question to answer, which is, why should I vote? This question is particularly pertinent today as we approach the general election. What empowering message would you like to convey to those who are contemplating that question?
We decided that this year that we were going to do a kind of a freedom summer around the concept of Fannie Lou Hamer and her tremendous efforts to register people to vote and to get them to vote. That was based on the fact that we had done a lot of work on who should vote, where should you vote, how many hours a day do you have, what's available, all those kinds of things. We've done the who, what, when, and all that stuff. We've not done the why. And as a result, when we've done this, we've made it very convenient for people to do. We've encouraged them to do it, but we haven't told them why they need to do it. And I had to reflect back on not only why people vote, but what happens when you don't vote, because we seldom don't talk about that. We'll talk about what happened, that the fact that you should, it's your responsibility, you're a citizen, you're this, you're that. But what happens to communities and people when they don't vote? And I often tell people, when you don't vote, you lose your voice. Number one, you give away the power of your vote to someone else. We often think it just sits around and does nothing, but it actually empowers other people. If you think of it just in a mathematical sense, that if there are 10 people in the room and everybody has the same power, which is what voting does, then you have 10% of your power. When you decide to back out of the system and you say, I'm not going to vote, then you have taken that 10% and distributed it to other people. You have given your vote to someone else. Your voice is now silenced, and their voice has increased. Their power has increased, and their influence has increased in the decisions that are made. And it's really interesting because it's not based on how much money you have, because even the wealthiest person in California has one vote. I'm responsible for 40 million Californians, and I get one vote. And so the vote is a powerful thing. And sometimes we don't know that. We just think if you don't do it, it doesn't exist. Well, it does exist. That power still remains there, but you have transferred it to someone else. And the larger community looks at folks who don't vote as if they don't care. They don't care whether their lawns are mowed. They don't care whether their streets are repaired. They don't care. They don't care if their schools aren't good. Why? Because they don't have a voice. They can't elect anybody, and they can't get rid of anybody, because that's how you do it. That's your voice. And so I tell people all the time, you are basically taking away the power that you have and giving it to others. And it may be people that you don't even like. You may have given your power to someone who's going to organize against you. That's what I tell young people. Your vote is equalizes even with your parents. I said, when you live in your parents' house, we understand the rules. Your mother and father, it's not a democracy. It's definitely a dictatorship. They got what they're in charge. They may let you say some things, but ultimately they have the power. Well, interestingly enough, when you register to vote and you vote, you have the same power as your parents. You have the ability to go in that booth privately or to turn in your ballot in the mail, and they don't even know what you've done, but you have expressed yourself in the same manner with the same influence that they have. And when you choose not to, vote at all, people look at you, or those who are in power, when they look at communities that don't vote, they don't feel compelled to have to do things for you other than maybe out of the goodness of their heart. But they know that you're not even in a position to get rid of them, that you can talk, but you haven't registered to vote. So when the rubber meets the road on election day, you are absent. You can't help the people that you like, and you can't get rid of the people that you don't like. So it's your power that is being lost when you don't vote. And when people see you as a voter, I tell them, they respect you. When you run campaigns, you learn something about the 5 out of 5 voter. Most people don't know what that means. I learned when I first ran for school board. That means that after the last 5 elections, this person voted in each election. I'm a 5 out of 5, which means people look at you differently in a campaign. They respect you when they come into your community. They know that whether it rains or there's a thunderstorm or there's a flood or whatever it is, you're going to figure out how you're going to vote. If you're a 1 out of 5, you may not vote even on a sunny day. You may not vote, to get you to vote, the least little thing will take you off your place, and you will not vote because it's raining or it's sunny or your boyfriend didn't say the right thing to you today. Whatever it is, you will find an excuse not to vote. So don't let people take away your power. It made me very difficult when I was an elected official to represent a poor community that didn't vote a lot. No matter how great my proposals were, they were always put at the bottom. Because why? The communities that voted all the time, people feared them. They feared, well, if we don't put this in this neighborhood over here, they're going to remember this come election day. But the other community, they don't even know we're here voting. They don't even know what we're talking about. So it won't matter one way or the other. And so it's hard. I had to work hard to tell people, you got to go vote. I know you like me. You're going to vote for me anyway, but you got to go in great numbers. You got to go in great numbers, because I want people to know that this community is a 50-60% voting base, just like other communities, and they will remember and they will vote their interest. So we have to vote in order to have a voice, in order to have power. We have chosen people to represent us, to be our voice. Everybody can't go to Sacramento, but they can pick up the phone and make a call, and they definitely can vote. And we need to make sure that our power is not given away to those who vote against our interest and who will vote against us, and empower ourselves to make sure that we make decisions for ourselves and our families. So, it's not just something that goes away. You lose your vote, you don't have the right to vote, you lose your power. And people who never had a chance to vote, like my parents when they were in the South, understood how powerless they felt when they were dealing with the process of getting better jobs or justice and fairness and those kinds of things. They felt powerless. And it's for that reason that people like Fannie Lou Hamer and Martin Luther King made registration and voting a top priority in Black communities. We often focus upon people eating lunch in a counter and doing those kinds of things. But when they had a chance to decide, what is Martin Luther King as a priority? Number one priority, Brown versus Board of Education, was basically education, making sure we had good books, good schools, quality education. And the other one was the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Those are the hallmarks. Those are the things that were critical to basically maintaining your freedom and being a voice for not only yourself today, but a voice for the future. So I tell people, use your power. Don't give it up. Don't let somebody else take over for you. Be self-determining. And that's what voting does.
Yes, ma'am. It surely does. I know I have voted in every election since I turned 18.
Exactly. Yes.
Thank you so much for your time, Madam Secretary. I know that I can speak for Julian, that it is an honor and a privilege to get to work with you and for you. And we are so grateful that you've taken the time to speak with us today. Thank you
Well,
so much.
thank you very much. Thank you. And thanks for the work that you're doing. We're looking forward to having an amazing Freedom Summer and a group of partners that are going to have a great turnout and encourage people to vote. So thank you for the work that you're doing as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us after the episode while we recap what we just talked about with Secretary Weber. I had a great time. I think that was a great conversation that we had. She's so eloquently spoken and brought up some really great points. But I want to hear from Kalika. Kalika, what was your favorite part of the episode?
I agree. I had a great time, and it's so inspiring to listen to her speak about things that she is passionate about, like voting. She spoke a lot about her mother and the impact that her mother had on their surrounding communities. And for me, it reminded me a lot of stories that my mother would tell me about my grandmother and the impact that my grandmother had in the community where my mother grew up. So I just was really moved by the conversation and so happy to just listen to her perspective on things.
Oh yeah, I could listen to her talk all day, I
Yeah.
think. It was so good. I can't
Yeah.
believe, yeah, just the insight and the wisdom that she has from all these years of service. I think giving her the space to talk to us, you and I are a little bit more new to this line of service and to elections especially. So the things that she must have seen and things that she must have experienced, not only in her personal life, but in her career as well, I think makes her incredibly well suited for this role. I really also enjoyed her. I think she said it was her mom's analogy about, keeping your hand open to serve, and then your hand will also be open to receiving. And I think that just creates the perfect recipe, the perfect platform to just enable this circle, this cycle of continued service. Um, there's so many
I
great things that we
agree.
can do. So as long as we're not scared, we're not shy. I mean, you and I aren't shy. We're
We're not shy. We're doing
we're
this
not shy.
podcast.
Look at us. We're podcasters. So, and I think a lot of people are kind of, you know, intimidated by the thought of service and getting out there and putting yourself out there um in whatever aspect that is. But just approaching things with an open mind, an open heart, and an open hand, I think can create such a great pathway to do great things. So I really loved her sentiment with that.
Me too. And it's big and small things. I think
Hmm.
that was what was so beautiful about the stories that she was telling, especially about her mother, is it's, just simple acts of sharing food
Yeah.
with people who are less fortunate and
Hmm.
sharing what little you have. I think
Yeah.
that's what um made such an impact on me is not needing to do, it doesn't have to be formal, it doesn't
Hmm.
always have to be perfect, but just taking that step to do something
Yeah.
is what is important. As you like to
Absolutely.
tell me, the work is what is important.
Our work is what we, yeah, absolutely. Don't
Yeah,
get too caught up in the details or the what ifs. Taking the first step is kind of all it takes. And I especially loved her message at the end of the episode when we asked her, what would you say to someone who asks, why should I vote? And she harped on this so beautifully. We have all this messaging to encourage people to vote. We tell them why they should, what what happens when they do, what their vote means, what their vote holds, the kind of power it holds. But she kind of approached it as what happens when you don't vote? Where does that power go? That power still is there, but if you're not going to use it, you're handing it off to someone else.
yeah,
And at that point, you don't have a say in what they do with it.
yeah.
You know, it's kind of, you know,
And it may not be, they may do something with that power that you're giving up that you don't want.
yeah. It could be the
And it
complete
really
opposite. Yeah.
boils down to that is, there's a reason that all of us go and vote
Hmm.
when we vote. And for a lot of us, that reason is personal,
Yeah.
whether it be we're voting for a particular cause or a particular marginalized group, or we're voting because we're part of that marginalized group, or whether we believe in what those representatives running can do. And so by not showing up and not voting, you really don't have a way to say how you feel about something. And
Mhm.
she put that more eloquently than I'm putting it now. But I really did enjoy her bringing it back to community. We also asked her about the role of business and organizations
Mhm.
in improving in civic engagement. And what I liked about what she said was talking about the role business has in their surrounding communities, and the role that they can have in their surrounding communities outside of a transactional role of service and goods, and talking about how they can support their employees and their power, being able to take the information out into their communities to help boost their communities. I really love how succinctly she put that together. And I know it fits so much with the Promote the Vote initiative, which is what we are doing on her behalf. And I it was just amazing to hear her talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, depending on what stage you are at in your life, work can take up a majority of your day. You know, that might be the most social interaction you have with other people. And for it to be a place of encouragement and especially encouraging civic engagement and just encouraging folks to use their voice, use their power, take control of their future. I mean, that's a place that I want to work. So
Yes.
I'm glad that we work in a place like that where we
Yes.
encourage not only just us and each other, but the surrounding public. I think it's a
Yes.
very important job that we have. Um, we obviously don't take it lightly because here we are out of our comfort zone doing a
Doing a
podcast.
podcast.
That means we're serious. We are serious about civic engagement.
Yes. We're
we
serious about your vote.
we are, absolutely. And I mean, I never thought that I would be here doing this, but talking
Either.
with you, speaking with the secretary herself, just kind of ignites this really exciting kind of flame under my feet to like get me going, to get my friends going, my family. You know, I'm gonna make them all listen to this. So if you are my friends or you are my family and you're listening to this podcast episode, do me a favor, get some friends, get your ballots, make a plan, and get out and vote because friends do not let friends sit out elections.
That is very true. And also sign up for Where's My Ballot? So you can track your ballot and get notifications from your county. Just kidding.
Ooh,
Well, no, not just
that's
kidding about
good.
Where's My Ballot. But I agree. Yes, my family and I hope my family and friends will be listening to this. And remember, this is about community.
Mhm.
All of us working together. Not all of us are, Julian and I work for the Secretary of State, and we're not experts on
No,
everything elections.
no.
We learn new things every single day. So
Mhm.
let's all learn together,
Yeah.
as Julian also likes to say. And I think this election season, all of us should look to our family, our friends, and look at our communities and see what impact our vote may have on our communities.
Absolutely.
All righty, guys. Well, we are going to wrap this podcast up. Thank you
Mhm.
so much for listening to the first episode of This is Promote the Vote California, the podcast. We are honored and privileged to have spoken to the secretary and for you to be listening to this podcast, our first ever podcast. So thank you. Have a great day. I feel like I should have a slogan or something, but I don't.
This is your moment.
I know. Don't forget the elections, November 5th. Get out
Incredible.
there and vote.
Good.
Tell your friends, your family, tell strangers, everybody.
Tell
Uh,
everyone.
yes. Have a great day. Bye bye.
Great. We'll catch you next time, you guys.
did I tell you that I've decided to make this election season my voter era? I signed up for Where's My Ballot, checked my voter status, and shared the info with 3 of my friends. I am promoting my vote. See what I did there?
Me too. It's so easy. Don't forget to sign up to track your ballot at wheresmyballot.sos.ca.gov. And you can check your voter status at voterstatus.sos.ca.gov. This is Promote the Vote California, the podcast, is brought to you by the California Secretary of State's office. It's hosted by Kalika Edwards and me, Julian Castillo, analysts and outreach coordinators for the Election Division. Don't forget to tune in next month for another conversation about equity and civic engagement. To learn more about our program, visit promotethevoteca.sos.ca.gov.